studios quit calling him. He stopped getting auditions. He went through a tough divorce that cost him millions. His body started falling apart from all the stunts. Lawsuits piled up. It felt like someone flipped a switch and his whole life went downhill fast. Back then, there was a guy in Hollywood who could make or break careers with a few phone calls. His name was Philip Berk. And right before Brendan's career tanked, something happened between them at a party in 2003. The wild part? Brendan never tried to blast Philip in public. He didn't go to the cops. He didn't do interviews about it. He just quietly asked for an apology. But Hollywood doesn't work like normal life. They made sure Brendan paid for speaking up. After almost 20 years of being pushed aside, Brendan finally spoke out. His story helped expose one of Hollywood's most powerful groups. Brendan Fraser was getting the kind of fame most actors dream about. A big reason was he wasn't afraid to take fun, tough roles. He first got noticed in the comedy Encino Man, playing a thawed-out caveman. Then the drama School Ties with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. He kept the momentum going when Disney cast him as George in George of the Jungle, a funny take on Tarzan that made 3 times its budget at the box office. But what people loved most about Brendan was how chill and friendly he seemed. Hollywood tried to turn him into the next big heartthrob, but he just came off as a regular nice guy, glad to be there. What? How much physical training did you do for this? Years and months. Months, weeks, and then there was the bicycle pump before each take. I would just pump it all up. They call it cotton. But that's a trade secret, so don't tell anyone. Brendan was a breath of fresh air. Not stuck up or dramatic like a lot of 90s stars. But he took his craft seriously. That showed big time in his breakout role in The Mummy, where he played adventurer Rick O'Connell. For Brendan, this was his hardest job yet. Making The Mummy took years, lots of director changes and script rewrites. The cast went to the Sahara Desert, dealing with isolation and huge sandstorms that shut down filming. It almost cost him his life too. Before the movie came out, Brendan went on David Letterman to promote it. He joked about the tough shoot but kept it light. In North Africa, in the Sahara Desert where Lawrence of Arabia was shot, sandstorms would kick up and force us to stop work early. Sometimes the sand got everywhere. Where did you get that stain? Well, it's in my shaving kit too. Even though Brendan downplayed it, the role wrecked his body. After Letterman asked more, Brendan admitted that in the opening hanging scene, he nearly died for real. The director wanted a tighter rope for a close-up. Tightened it up and the director said, "The tension didn't look realistic. Can we take it up a bit more?" I said, "Okay, just one take." The camera spun around to my face. Next thing I know, my elbow's in my ear and medics are yelling, "Wake up, Brendan. You technically died?" "Technically dead for 12 or 14 seconds, my doctor said." Notice how he said yes to that risky take even when he knew it was dangerous. That's how things were back then. Actors didn't push back or they'd risk never working again. Good thing the hard work paid off. The Mummy turned Brendan into a global star. It cost $80 million but made almost $500 million worldwide. Everyone was talking about him. His personal life was good too. He just married actress Afton Smith and had their first kid. To the public, he was on top. He came back for The Mummy Returns, which made even more money. He'd reached the peak, and fans loved rooting for him because he was so likable. But it wouldn't last. Without knowing it, Brendan had entered the dark side of Hollywood at its worst time, a place full of abuse where powerful people faced no consequences. Brendan was about to learn the hard way after clashing with the head of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association over an assault claim. That basically got him sidelined for years. The HFPA ran the Golden Globes. They started in 1943 as foreign journalists controlling movie news overseas. In 1944, they launched the Globes. At first, the industry laughed at them. But when NBC picked them up in the late 80s, things exploded. Ratings soared, and winning a Globe became huge. It could make careers. You'd think it was fair voting for the best work. But no, it was all about influence. Whoever controlled the awards controlled a lot in Hollywood. One big player was producer Harvey Weinstein. He pushed the Globes hard, using their timing before the Oscars. He showered HFPA members with gifts, access to stars, and attention when others ignored them. He got tons of nominations for his movies. Other studios copied him. Harvey used this to build his power. If you stayed on his good side, doors opened. Who do you most want to party with tonight? Harvey Weinstein. Scarlett Johansson once said the HFPA got legit because of guys like Weinstein pushing for Oscar buzz. The industry followed. Most people outside Hollywood didn't know how much power the HFPA had. They just thought it was journalists voting fairly. But they used secrecy well. They paid for silence. Publicists got cash to bring stars to red carpets. Awards consultants charged big fees to game the system. Money went to stylists, drivers, even ad revenue for magazines. It was like a machine controlling Hollywood news and perks. One key figure making this happen was Philip Berk. He'd been in the HFPA 33 years, president off and on for 8 terms. He stayed low-key, with weird short appearances, like comparing The Social Network to Citizen Kane. It's a bizarre comparison. I compare it to Citizen Kane in some respect. The thing that makes it unique is it's not just great filmmaking, but easily the most entertaining movie I sat through last year. Hard to believe he knew movies well. But it didn't matter. He ran the HFPA, a huge Hollywood power. Anyone who crossed them was at risk. To see how bad it could get, look at HFPA journalist Nick Douglas, who got fired and later died by suicide after breaking minor rules. Nick wrote for Big Buzz magazine and was an HFPA member. In 2004, they suspended him for selling a photo of himself with Tom Selleck to a tabloid for $50 and lying about it. HFPA rules banned selling those photos because stars complained. Some thought Nick did it to look connected since he wanted to act. Suspension might make sense, but it got worse. They also cited him taking free beers from an MGM party. Like getting fired for taking drinks at a company event. They cut him off from junkets and interviews, basically ending his job. Things turned tragic when Nick Douglas died by suicide in 2005, just days before the Golden Globe nominations were set to be announced. Nick was an Irish journalist who worked for a gossip magazine called Big Buzz. He'd been a member of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association for a while, covering celebrity news and events. But in 2004, the HFPA suspended him over what seemed like pretty minor stuff. He sold a photo of himself posing with actor Tom Selleck to a tabloid for only $50, and he lied about it when asked. On top of that, they accused him of taking some unopened beers from a reception party thrown by MGM Studios. It sounds ridiculous, like getting fired for grabbing a free drink at a work event. But the HFPA had strict rules against members selling photos or doing anything that might look bad for their image. They said stars didn't want those pictures leaked to tabloids without control. The suspension hit Nick hard. It cut him off from all the press junkets, celebrity interviews, and events that the HFPA controlled. Basically, it ended his ability to do his job as a Hollywood reporter. He was living in Belfast at the time, working part-time at a charity shop to make ends meet. On December 8, 2005, he hanged himself in that same shop. It was a heartbreaking end for someone who had chased the Hollywood dream from across the ocean. His editor at Big Buzz didn't hold back when asked about it. He straight up blamed the HFPA, saying, they basically took a livelihood away from a guy who was out there trying to earn a living. It led completely directly to what ended up happening to Nick. The story made headlines in places like the New York Times and The Independent, shining a light on the dark side of this powerful group. When reporters reached out to Philip Berk, who was a key figure in the HFPA and had served as president multiple times, his response was ice cold. He said, "We've had many people suspended for actions we deemed harmful to the Hollywood foreign press. We're trying to protect our image." Certainly none ended up in suicide. If Nick did take his life, which seems apparent, I don't think you can say there's a causal relationship between the two. No warmth, no sympathy, just a flat denial of any blame. It was like talking about a business decision, not the loss of a human life. To the HFPA leaders, Nick's death wasn't a tragedy that called for reflection or change. They felt indifferent, more worried about their reputation than the pain they might have caused. This incident wasn't isolated. Another HFPA member died by suicide in 2011, adding to the whispers about the group's toxic environment. The whole thing raised big questions about power in Hollywood. If the HFPA could punish one of their own journalists so harshly over something as small as a $50 photo and a few beers, what would they do to outsiders who challenged them? What about big stars whose stories could really threaten their control? It showed how the organization operated like a closed club, quick to protect itself at any cost. And that's exactly the kind of fear that kept people silent for years. This brings us to Brendan Fraser, who went from being one of Hollywood's hottest actors to basically disappearing for nearly 2 decades. It all tied back to his claim that Philip Berk assaulted him in 2003 at a luncheon at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Brendan was at the peak of his fame back then, fresh off hits like The Mummy. He was leaving the event when he saw Berk. They went to shake hands, but instead, Berk reached around with his left hand, grabbed Brendan's butt cheek, and even poked a finger near his private area, what Brendan called the taint. He described it vividly in a 2018 interview. His left hand reaches around, grabs my ass cheek, and one of his fingers touches me in the taint. And he starts moving it around. The moment left Brendan feeling sick and detached, like the world had shifted. He said, "I felt ill. Like a little kid with a ball in my throat. Thought I'd cry. Like invisible paint was thrown on me." He rushed home and told his wife, Afton Smith, but decided to keep it quiet. He was scared it would wreck his career or become the only thing people remembered about him. "I didn't want to contend with how that made me feel or becoming part of my narrative," he later explained. Still, his team reached out to the HFPA quietly, asking for a written apology from Berk. What they got was a weak non-apology. "My apology admitted no wrongdoing. The usual. If I've done anything that upset Mr. Fraser, it was not intended and I apologize." The HFPA also promised Brendan he'd never have to be in the same room as Berk again. But Berk has denied that promise ever happened, and the HFPA has refused to comment on it. Back in 2003, this kind of thing wasn't big news. Sexual assault claims, especially from men, often got dismissed or mocked. Victims faced backlash, not support. Hollywood was a place where powerful people like Berk could act without consequences, protected by groups like the HFPA. So Brendan stayed silent publicly, but the trauma changed him deeply. It sparked depression, self-blame, and even memory fog. He said, "I became depressed. Blamed myself. Miserable. This is nothing, a guy copped to feel. That summer, I can't remember my next job." He kept working, but it felt like going through the motions to support his family. Even after the incident, Brendan landed some roles. He appeared in the 2004 Oscar-winning film Crash as a district attorney. He did guest spots on TV shows like Scrubs, where he played a charming doctor, and voiced characters on King of the Hill and The Simpsons. But his momentum slowed.